Hello Tejaswini, welcome to InternPro's OPT Unplugged.
Yeah, we'll start with what major you did in ASU, what made you choose that major, and why you came to US to choose that.
Like coming to the US was not like a immediate decision for me. There were a lot of factors that came into picture. I mastered in user experience. I did not know a lot about the field when I was coming here, but I had my start in apparel production. I studied at National Institute of Fashion Technology in India. I did a major in apparel production, retail strategy, and while I was interning, during that time I was interning for companies like Gokuldas, which do a lot of production for Adidas, Puma, Nike, Reebok. I also got to work in the e-commerce sector for the same retail part, and I wanted to kind of experiment and see what else I could do. So I got into animation. I learned graphic design on my own. Throughout my college, I was working with two NGOs as a graphic designer and a volunteer event organizer, and I loved that. So I kind of wanted to do the same thing. So in the animation studio, I started as a illustrator, and then I ended up becoming like the single person doing all of the pre-production work. Um, I wrote almost like 50 concepts and like about 15 of them uh, as full scripts for a Nickelodeon TV show which is called Pinaki and the Bhoot Bandhus. I loved every aspect of the creativity, and while I was learning and growing within that field is how I fell upon UI UX design, and I started doing my Google certification, and hence so on and so forth. I started doing UI UX, and then I got admission to ASU. And so I wanted to take it further, and I felt like maybe masters was the right choice because I was learning very much like in the process or in the teams. And the thing with that ends up becoming is like you're working so much in a flow that you learn everything from a very like single point of view. And I thought doing a master's in UX would give me a higher perspective because there are a lot of other teams who are doing things like UX research, which I did not know. We would only get the data for analysis or like the final analytical report. So that's kind of why I did. And ASU has a very free and open like design course, which is what I wanted. And thanks to that, I was able to learn psychology and pick my own subjects. I did customize my course a little bit to my own interests, which was towards research. So I was able to take up a few subjects with psychology, and I graduated recently in August 2024.
What challenges did you face after graduation, especially during your postdoc?
I was supposed to graduate December of 2024, but I decided to kind of take on a thesis, and in order to give more space to the thesis, I ended up completing my course curriculum a lot faster. Because of that, I actually didn't have enough time to prepare my resumes and my portfolios. I actually ended up getting time for that only after graduating. Like I was working on it, but I just couldn't complete it because there was so much to do and juggle with the thesis, the studies, and when you're an international student, you have to do like 9 credits. I think the timing of it was just not right at the moment. Then I completed my portfolio, I did my resume, um, and I couldn't understand what I was doing wrong. I was not able to get the right mentorship or feedback, and an understanding of how to get into the US market. And all 2 months of that transition period that I had between the start date of my OPT and my graduation was kind of like that. And during that time, I ended up actually randomly meeting a friend of mine, and that's kind of how I found out about InternPro. I think that's kind of when my sense of clarity like started coming back to me because in order to get into InternPro, I had to go through these mock interview platforms. I got access to two like resume, like one AI based resume platform and then an AI based interview platform. So and we had to mandatorily complete those before we got into InternPro. And I think that gave me a lot of sense of clarity because I got a new perspective on my resume. I also ended up kind of improving on the way that I was presenting myself on the resume because of those two things. Within like a week of joining InternPro, I was able to find a startup. I actually ended up getting 3 interviews with 3 different startups, and within 3 days, I was like on the project and I was working, and I got to like put my skills to use and like present myself and put things forward. And because it was a startup, there were a lot of struggles with that. But yeah, I think that's for a later stage.
Perfect. So what I know that you mentioned this while you were talking about like how you enter InternPro, like when you spoke to your friend about it. But can you tell me what specifically motivated you to join InternPro?
There's a lot of students and friends that I know through my parents who graduated, and it took them a very long time to find a job. And I was hearing all of these like horror stories of people joining consultancy agencies and these talent management organizations and just getting stuck in like really rigorous contracts, wherein like if they're not on a project, they get into all of these like illegal things, and you're kind of stuck where it's like you can't escape but you can't stay either. And I did not want to do that, but that would also mean that I would be incurring a lot of my unemployment days, and I wouldn't even have an opportunity to like do my first H1 or the second. And I was not even getting any experience, right? Because that paramounts to like 5 months of unemployment in total, including the grace period you have plus the 90 days that you get. Um, so, sorry, 120 days. So it was because of that that InternPro felt like a safer option to me because I had friends on it and I knew the contracts were not as rigorous. The induction period is 2 weeks. For you to get out is also 2 weeks, and you're pretty much only in like contractual terms working with the NDA, your partner, and the project. So there's a lot of safety in the fact that you're still able to gain your experience without having to uh, get into rigorous contracts. Also, not be unemployed, because being unemployed for that long is also like it feels really like hard because you've put in so much money into your course, you've done so much work, and the fact that even if like you're not getting paid or even if you're not able to get a full-time job, not doing anything at all like coursework or anything can be very hard. At least it was for me. So InternPro felt like a safe net for me, where I'm like putting in 20 hours of work. I still have most of my week to myself to work on my resume, my portfolio, job interviews, and other things. And I have to just give 2 weeks of notice. So in that sense, it was very helpful for me because I have a set schedule for the work that I have to do for InternPro, which also helps me stay motivated for whatever I need to do for myself to grow my skills. Um, so in that sense, InternPro made a lot of sense to me, and I have friends who've been on InternPro for like 4 or 5 months already, and so they graduated in May 2024. That's kind of how I found out about it, and they actually answered a lot of questions for me. And knowing that it is something that's legal and at the same time gives you the experience while also allowing you an easy exit, like these three things just made it like the perfect option for me. um I've had people like, so a lot of people take advice from my father like for different things, and he himself actually reached out to me. He knows of like 4 or 5 kids who are struggling, and he told their parents about InternPro and what I am doing. So there are a lot of people who do want to get into it. People are interested, and I think it's definitely a better option than getting into something shady or like getting stuck with things that can affect you in a really bad way, financially and emotionally. So
Yeah, now that you have spoke about what motivated you to join InternPro and who all you reached out to, like to know about the platform. So, what was your first impression after you joined the platform?
I think my favorite thing about InternPro was the onboarding video, which made it pretty clear what the platform was for. And once you get into it, it's actually extremely easy to find startups, roles, and InternPro has this like. Initially, I was kind of skeptical when I was filling up the form because the logging in form is kind of lengthy because you do have to mention your OPT dates and all of those things. But I think one of the best things it has, which I wish every job platform had, is like you upload your resume to InternPro and it um, kind of takes on all the keywords of the roles and the jobs you're looking for. And when you look at the startups and the roles and the jobs that they've posted, it has a math score that tells you, like, based on your resume, how many qualities or like how many things um, match to the job role itself, and it gives you a math score. So like it's so easy to see that okay, there are like probably like hundreds of startups that have applied here, but out of these only like 50 have roles for me, and out of those 50 some are 100% match for me. They match my experience, uh, my strengths that I can play towards, and that makes the job application process so much easier. Like imagine you have like 50 roles to kind of filter through, because at a time you're allowed to apply for 3, which initially I was skeptical about because you want to apply for 100. That's what normally people do. Uh, but it was very easy for me to filter the 3 that matched my needs, matched not just my skills but also like projects that excited me. So it was very easy. I checked my math score, I picked the job role I like, and I see what the project is. If it is something that intrigues me, I apply for it. And the response time was phenomenal. Like I applied somewhere around 4 on Friday, and I think by 6 p.m. I had 2 interviews scheduled for Monday and Tuesday. And Tuesday, I wasn't able to attend the Monday interview, but then I interviewed with the second one, and everything went well. Me and the startup were on the same page and looked like what they wanted from the project and what I could offer to the project was a very good match. The team seemed fantastic, and pretty much by the end of it, I had an offer letter. I had the link to join the program, and I did. And I was in. And I started working like 3 or 4 days later. So that was like I wish every like applying for jobs was that easy. So that was fun. It was fun, quick, and I felt good because I was finally like it made me feel like okay, the skills I have are not bad, and there's actually a use for them in the market. It's just like it's such a big world, and there's so much competition. But yeah, it was.
So how has InternPro helped you upskill or gain industry relevant experience?
So for the first half, uh, I think my favorite thing about InternPro is how quickly I can get in and off projects. Even like if I get in, I don't like it, I can pretty much like change to a different startup. And for the second, for the upskilling part, I think because I was already on a project and because I'm working with a startup, there's a lot of independent contribution that's involved. There's a lot of stuff that I have to do on my own. It is not always easy to get in touch with the team or like somebody to talk to, because everybody's just figuring things out, right? There's nothing, at least like in the project that I am, we are still figuring things out. The product, like we're making the MVP, so there's so many things up in the air. So I had to put my production and supply chain skills and that towards like planning management, because I have to take care of everything. But at the same way, like I'm gaining experience towards a very specific goal, which is to be a UX designer. But I'm able to do like end to end everything, which very clearly showcased me the areas where I'm lacking. It's like I know how to do things, but I'm not efficient. For example, like one of the things, and for the platform that I'm working with, for the startup I'm working with, there's a lot of AI stuff. So again, don't know. So in terms of that, it gave me a lot of clarity on skills I'm missing to be a good UX designer in today's market. So I start. So I realized I need to know at least a little bit of coding, enough to get like harness the power of ChatGPT or like Perplexity and go crazy with that. So I started doing React JS. I'm learning JavaScript. I have coding experience, but it was something I wished I didn't have to go back to. But so I started learning AI for designers. I know exactly the type of courses I need to strengthen myself. Um, so it gave me that sense of clarity on where I need to put my efforts towards upskilling, because otherwise doing another UX course is like such an easy thing. Go on Coursera and you do end to end everything. Um, but being on InternPro and actually like doing work for the US market gave me a lot of sense of clarity on exactly where I'm lacking when you think of the pipeline itself.
Awesome. That's amazing. That sounds very exciting to be honest. The fact that you're able to find the gaps that you need to fill and how you can gather resources to enable you to do that.
Yeah.
So that's great. Can you share an example of a skill that you learned specifically during the internship that will be valuable for your career, especially in terms of like UX design?
So for the homepage and the development for the organization, I am building a homepage using Webflow. So one of the things, like two of the skills that I really had to pick up for that was a little bit of understanding of JavaScript, because Webflow gives you the freedom to like do JavaScript animations, which is a lot easier to do than the platform's pre-integrated animations, which are also great. But definitely, if you want that customization and that little bit of push, it's very helpful. It's not like I need to know all of JavaScript. I basically just need to know enough to be able to read through the code and understand it, because then I can just use the script, call for the script on the platform and just animate or like use preset libraries to create the website and make it more custom, make it easier to like flow from like desktop to a mobile screen and all of. So in that sense, I did have to pick up a little bit. Additionally, the other thing I learned is so Webflow integrates with Spline and um, Lottie animations, because I am under an NDA. During school projects, I was just using them as it is, and I used to make slight changes. But now I am like custom creating those things. So I have had to learn 3D. I have had to learn After Effects. I took help from friends and colleagues that I met during ASU to kind of upskill. So I think those were very like specific skills that I've developed again specifically for this role. But I think they will be very helpful in the long run, because I've seen like Spline grow, and I'm seeing a lot of 3D animations on pretty much every platform. So I think it's definitely going to help me become a better UX designer.
Awesome. That's great. When you talk about like the experience that you get or the knowledge that you get, like being an intern or the experience that you work while working with a startup, but still in terms of building your resume and building your confidence and staying up to date with the industry's trends, right? So how does InternPro help you do that?
I think I'm very fortunate because the startup I'm working for um, is trying to integrate AI into pretty much everything that it is offering as a product. I cannot go into too much detail with it, but because the project is for the current market, it is a startup, and they do see a target audience out there for it. And I have done the user testing myself to understand some of the gaps in terms of the product itself. Um, it it forces you to very streamlinedly look into the industry and its needs and how it's kind of functioning, where you're not just looking at things for the sake of a job, but you're looking at the future possibilities of things, because you're in a startup, right? And I am in a startup that hasn't even launched the product, which means I'm all the more looking towards the future, and I'm trying to predict the needs or like what visually people would appeal to, and also make sure that like if we have competitors, how are we setting ourselves apart? It gives you a very like streamlined focus towards the industry and stuff that's happening around you. And I think that has kind of has helped me grow in a way that I don't think I would have if I just ended up anywhere else. And it was only because of InternPro that I was able to find a startup that not only like chose me, but I also chose it. Like I chose the product, I chose my interest. And I am working a for a product that I actually like and appreciate and I would like to use in my life. And B, I'm like pretty much catering everything I know towards it. So I am upskilling towards what I like, towards what I want to be, what I think should be my strength as a UX designer. So in that sense, like um, I have like a few projects lined up on InternPro. As soon as I'm done with this, that also like really excite me. And I think in today's job market, that kind of experience and that kind of freedom is hard to come, where you can actually genuinely like pick your own project and pick your own company. It's never that simple. So I know it's like a little unpaid and all that, but I'm getting wonderful experience that, and the kind of freedom I have to learn and make mistakes, I probably wouldn't have it elsewhere.
And it adds to your resume as well. So
Oh, 100%. Oh, I can again, you cannot fully get into the details, but you cannot refute the fact that you are working in a startup where if you're not good, they're gonna cull you immediately. Like they don't have the time to keep you otherwise. So it's been 2 months, so I think I'm doing something good. Probably that's why I'm still here. So that gives me confidence.
What has been the most rewarding part of your internship?
I think finally like getting to like work with the team, like put things out there, get actual like feedback where it's not just one professor, but you have like, I know the startups team is not big, but still you're constantly getting feedback from people. You're constantly keeping track of how much you're doing. When you're working on your own, I think that sense of growth is missing. But because I'm working with a startup, I can actually like measure my growth in more sustainable and like more concrete ways, because I'm watching a progress happen in a very linear fashion with a lot of back-end documentation that all that also needs to be done, because otherwise like when you're doing projects, you're not always managing your files very cleanly. You're not keeping a note of every decision you make. You're experimenting and you're trying to get the project done in the most innovative way possible. But now it's also like you need to create a product that is sustainable on its own, so that even when I leave, when people get my files, they know what has happened, they know why certain decisions were made. So documenting all of those in a proper fashion, that not just me but somebody else also understands, because the team I'm working with, they're not UX people. Because when I give it to my professor, they're seeing things from a different eye. But when I give it to them, I learn so much about like, okay, to me it made sense, but to them it's like they don't know why. So that's an interesting facet I'm like learning, which is like, okay, just because as a UX designer I have a very different perspective on things, so I feel like this going up and down just like makes sense. Like, oh, but maybe to someone else they don't get it. Like they're not seeing the affordance the way I am. So learning that and like making those subtle modifications has been a very rewarding thing for me.
Perfect. So let's talk about your team. Like how is the experience has been like till now working with your team?
I absolutely like love the team. They've been very open minded. They allow me to have discussions. We have stand-ups every day. So there's always like this recurring like opportunity for quick iterations. I can get feedback quickly, which means it's like how the Silicon Valley rule, right? Break fast. So in that sense, because we have meetings every day and they're willingly putting in that time for you. And even when if there's a longer discussion and I get stuck, it's very quick for me to like reach out to them and get things moving, which I really really appreciate.
I think you mentioned about like the rewarding part of like the internship experience, but like let's talk about what kind of feedback you got from your company or your startup, and how it helped you in shaping your performances and your approach to work.
In terms of feedback, I think, like I said, like we have meetings every day and we're discussing things on a day-to-day basis. So in that sense, I'm getting not like a long list of like, oh my god, you did like all of this wrong. I work for 4 hours a day. I report the 4 hours at the end of the day, so I immediately know if something is up, and it's generally like a very simple feedback at that stage. So I fix it next day. It like repeats. Generally, feedback is two ways. One is like actual feedback where they're like that this doesn't work for us and this is not what we actually had in mind, because I don't have a product, right? So it's like they're like, okay, so they give me a sense of clarity ki, no, you're going in the wrong direction because this is not what we want, this is what we want. Sometimes that same thing can pivot towards ki, I get that this is what you want, but my user research tells me that this is something that we should take into consideration. Then we have this discussion about like what is feasible, what is not, because at this stage money matters. Money and time are the most important things to a startup. So we have to think of both of the things, and we also have to think of the skills that we have within the team to put that thing, make it work. So once that discussion happens, we can then come to a common ground on certain things. The second type of feedback that I get is basically like I put a product forward, I don't tell them anything, and I'm like, just go through it. And then you see them interacting, and I realize that certain things are not working because to me they're a mental model, but to them they're not. But then I also raise the question of like, is it just not a mental model for them? Will 90% people still understand? Because within my company, there are 4 people who are my target audience, but there is one person who is not. He's an outlier. So are the other 4 also not understanding becomes the next question. So I think those are the 2 types of feedback. One is more raw, whereas the other one is more discussion based and like communication, like just getting onto the same page of what they want versus what I can offer.
Okay, fine. Let's talk about a particular incident or particular experience while interning at the company that you are right now that made you proud of yourself, like the work that you did.
I think for me, 2 of the contributions that I'm very, very proud of is like sitting down and actually like looking for research papers to substantiate some of the things that the company was offering as a product. Even before I started anything, I had this FigJam board where I was just throwing things in, and um, the paper has helped me substantiate a lot of the decisions I've made when I started the design with the team, because there were times when I got feedback and they were like, this is not what we want, and I would be like, I understand, but this is the purpose of your product and this is what I found in research. Do you see where the discrepancy is and why I've done this? That opens a new kind of a discussion, because yes, like you have something in mind, I completely agree, there's nothing wrong with that, but there is previous research that suggests a certain behavior in the people that you're targeting. It suggests a certain need, because you're looking from your perspective, which is not wrong, you and the people around you. But when you look at a research paper, you're looking at things a little more broader, you have a little more clarity, and things have been substantiated as opposed to a product that's not been launched. So I think that was something that I was really proud of. Another thing I was proud of is I like sometimes, you know, like how you're working in a streamlined way and you get like 100 ideas to do that, or like you're doing something midway, or like maybe I should add this, remove that. So I was also going through that, and because I had so much of freedom, I was like, let me do everything. So in that sense, the thing that I was proud of is like I made a board for all the different features that the company had, and every time I find like a new piece of research, or like from my user interviews when I get a new insight, or like when I'm looking at the survey that I've conducted and like I look at the results and I'm getting all of these like new ideas. I have a board for each feature under which I mention like these ideas that I get, which at a later stage, once the initial mock-up is done, I can have a discussion and like look into priorities and add those features to the product in a later stage. And others in the team also, like after a few ideas, started contributing to that. Like when we're in a meeting and somebody gets an idea, they're like, oh, you know what, put that on the board. So we have like, so these ideas are not lost in space.
Yeah.
So again, because it's a startup, I don't think a lot of documentation is happening, but I know that from my side, everything good, bad, ugly has been documented, and maybe not in the most beautiful way, but all of the boards have very specific names, purposes. There are sticky notes for every reference and idea that I have. uh, Everything I'm referencing, even in terms of mental models, I have all the images, I have everything to substantiate. So in that sense, I think my work has been very like streamlined, and I've learned like new ways to do things, new ways to document things in a way that others can also like contribute easily, like even if they're not tech savvy, or even if there's somebody that has never used Figma, like finding that balance has been something that I'm very proud of.
Okay, so if you could describe your experience with InternPro and the company that you're working for in a few words, or let's say like your three top words that you would use to describe it?
I think easy to use, easy to find a role, and then easy to get started. Like getting started with the project, I think it was very easy. Like it was like, I would say it was like, imagine, like it was a 3 clicks. I would pretty much say that it was like the first click was the job, the second click was getting the interview and setting up that, third was you're selected, you click on it, immediately you get your startup's email ID and you're working with them. So, and I also did appreciate that it does give you an experience letter, so that if you want to travel to your country, you do have that opportunity because you get an experience letter, and in terms of OPT it's safe. So
Perfect. Okay, if you could give your past self one piece of advice before starting this journey, what would it be?
Interesting question. I don't know if there's like any like major like thing that I would tell myself, except good job, good job finding InternPro and good job getting onto it, because the alternatives at that point were not looking great for me. One thing I would definitely tell myself is like, I think I wish I had used the time prior to getting onto InternPro on like upskilling myself in the way that I've done after joining. A few things I think I would have really benefited from, like increasing my efficiency with Figma, getting used to all the shortcuts on Figma. I think I was still using like the mouse to find everything. So in that sense, my efficiency is definitely improved, and I wish my efficiency had already gotten to that point before getting into InternPro. I've also learned a lot of new platforms, so I wish I had put in more time at that time into it and did not procrastinate because of my fear for like. I don't think it was procrastination. I think, to be very honest, I think I was a little like, oh, I've graduated from ASU, I'm gonna get a job. So in that sense, I wish that was not my approach, and my approach was more to make myself a more uniquely, like a more uniquely able UX designer. Like, because everybody is graduated from ASU, everybody has the same skills. So what makes me different? I think I was not thinking from that perspective, and I think I would have definitely benefited from putting in efforts in that direction.
So how has InternPro supported you in balancing your internship, the work that you do with a startup, and also hunting for full-time roles?
InternPro basically like makes my life with the 20 hours that I have to put in towards the startup very easy, because like InternPro is like my touch point and the and the startup's touch point for where we are reporting things. So if they have issues with my work, it's very easy for them to also raise a discrepancy. Um, it's not exactly like a thankless job. There are like stuff that gets reported, and InternPro takes care of like on the back end, like if any issues arise from the OPT situation, I know they're gonna handle it. I know they're gonna let me know if something comes up to them. So I'm not exactly in the dark in terms of the communications that may be happening. So in that sense, like InternPro is managing my OPT side of things, and while I'm trying to figure out my job search thing, I can completely like pivot away from InternPro to do it, because InternPro on the back end is managing all of my reports, is doing the reporting for me, and they have a platform that makes it very easy for me to report all the 20 hours of work that I'm doing um, during the week. I can then like, the moment I'm out of InternPro, I can completely like focus my day towards upskilling towards what I'm doing on InternPro with the startup, while also focusing on my resume and jobs, because now I have a lot more clarity on, this is what I'm doing, this is the kind of work that's happening in order to create a product, so this is what I need to know. And then I take that and I put that in my resume, and then I'm editing things in that sense, where it's like every skill I'm learning, every skill I'm executing in the startup is going towards my resume and my portfolio. So there's a lot of learning that has happened in that sense, and I have started using my documentation that I've done for the startup, I'm using those skills in my portfolio to represent my work, because I can see that this has a lot of sense of clarity, which means if I can bring that same clarity to my previous work, bring in that level of documentation, then maybe my portfolio will be a little more appealing to hiring managers. So in that sense, it has helped me create this nice distinguishing between the 20 hours of work I put for my startup versus the additional 2 to 3 hours that I spend every day towards the job search. And because I have InternPro dealing with all of this backend stuff, it's a lot less stressful for me, because it's also giving me a place to gain experience, but at the same time, it's also giving me the motivation and the courage I need to focus on my job search without pitying myself or feeling bad for myself. Feel preachy.
No, it's your experience. And okay, this is something you mentioned, but let's get that in full extent. So how do you think InternPro stands out compared to other platforms? For let's say for F1 graduates generally.
I think I did touch base on it a little bit. I think the thing that really I really appreciated about InternPro, maybe not at the time, but I do appreciate now, is when you're onboarding on InternPro, there's there's a 2 hour video. I think it's a 1 hour or a 30-minute video that walks you through everything. Additionally, it also has partnership with certain platforms where you can go get your resume checked. It also gives you feedback prior to even uploading your resume to InternPro to apply to startups. Okay, maybe you want to fix these things for the kind of roles you're looking for. So I got a lot of feedback from that. The one good thing about the platform that I found got through InternPro was that there's actually even not just the AI, but you also get an actual person's feedback. I think it's 2 or 3 business days, you upload your resume and you're I want feedback. The people who are working for the platform who give you actual HR managers giving you feedback that, okay, AI feedback aside, we think you still need to fix certain things. So I think I received a couple of comments 2 or 3 days later. I did make those fixes, and it's only after that that I uploaded my resume to InternPro. So in that sense, that platform was fun. Another thing that I really enjoyed was there's a mock interview platform also that we had to kind of get used to and work with before getting onto InternPro to kind of train you for the type of questions that you may be be put forth through during the interview. So it's almost like you're not applying for the jobs unprepared. There's so much of back-end support that you get. So I did not fully go into the mock interview thing, but I did use the feature of the mock interviews where you type in a role, you type in your strengths, or not even your strengths, you type in a role and you give them some idea of where you're headed. And they have this multiple things where difficulty level based, and also the job, let us say you're a beginner, intermediate, or a really experienced person, you can opt for one of those and then get a list of questions that you can prepare for on the platform itself. The question, let us say for UX role, as a mid-tier person, 1 to 3 years of experience, they give me a list of 20 questions, and there itself I can write my answers. I get feedback also for those answers, and at the end of it, I have a document that I can see through with a list of all of the questions and all of my responses. And that was actually very helpful for me when I interviewed with my startup, because I had already touched base on so much of this, and rewriting also helped me keep that in my mind. So I was able to give my interview without stuttering or getting scared, because I had already prepared for it. I already knew all the answers, and I had all of my keywords kind of written on a small notepad on my screen. So I knew the things I wanted to say, I knew how I wanted to say them, and I had already rehearsed it with the platform. So in that sense, I think you're not blindsided when you start looking for the startups at InternPro. You're very prepared.
So Yeah. So, what advice would you give to other F1 graduates who are considering joining?
Do your due diligence, and if you are somebody that's scared about getting into any scams or like getting stuck with things that you may regret in the future, and you're just looking for a safe space to give you that extra time you need to find a full-time role, I think don't think too much about it. Get into the InternPro platform, take a look at all of the terms and conditions, and get started on like gaining an experience. And you can also like you also have the freedom to decide how much time you want to put into it, between 20 to 40 hours. I have chosen the minimum, which is 20. So whatever works for you, pick that role, pick that experience that you're looking for. um, and I don't think anybody is going to make it any easier than InternPro is going to do for you, while you're just taking that extra time to find a full-time opportunity. So while you're like while making sure that you're not losing your OPT unemployment days, you can just have that safe space to gain experience while keep applying for jobs, or like upskilling or doing courses, if that is something that you want to do. You just have all of that freedom, and InternPro will take care of your OPT and make sure you have this like safe space to take that additional time you need, because that's what you. Oh my god, yes, definitely. InternPro made it relieved my stress, because the moment that like my OPT day started, I'm like, oh, what am I gonna do? Like no one's calling me back. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know how to fix this. So InternPro was such a like don't think about it decision for me to make. Where I like called my parents, and I was like, we were all like panicking because like OPT is gonna start. I don't know what we're gonna do. And we were in touch with so many like consultancies, and I was like hearing all of these scam stories, and I'm like, and then I was like, I told my parents, I'm like, I have friends who are already doing this very safe. It's just 2 weeks of like notice period, and I have all of this freedom. Even when I'm not on a project, I can still keep working with InternPro, and like like being um, employed by InternPro. So all of those things were like such a good thing. So I told my parents, I'm like, I have this, like, let me give it a shot. I have 1 year that I can still work with InternPro while gaining experience, while also applying for jobs. So I was like, what better can I ask for? Like, I wish salaries were involved, but
Yeah.
I think you can't get everything. Right? You win some, lose some. So, hi, my name is Tejaswini Indukuri. I am from Hyderabad, India. I'm an F1 student in the US. I recently graduated from ASU with a master's in user experience design. And thanks to InternPro, I'm currently interning with a edtech startup called AI Genie.